Once again, good day everyone and welcome to your Professional Education 01 course, Building and Enhancing New Literacies Across the Curriculum. I'll show you the start to our midterm course, which focuses on environmental literacy in this video. The next said video you will see is a presentation I gave to the youth groups in various parts of the Philippines, which was sponsored by the Herd Movement, Lions International Philippine Chapter, Smart Communications, and many others. In this session, the focus will be on the role of the youth sector, which including you, in maintaining and conserving our natural resources via the lens of ESD, or Education for Sustainable Development. But before we move on to the video presentation, I want you to ask a few questions. You must submit your response via LMS and explain each one in detail. The following are the questions. Number 1, what is ESD and why is it a useful framework for conserving and maintaining our natural resources? Second question, what are the various ESD activities being carried out by Cebu's several universities? What insights can you glean from these actions in terms of ESD work? Third, what role does ESD play in the preservation and conservation of natural resources for the youth sector? Fourth, in addition to the topics stated by the speaker, what are the different challenges, issues, and concerns that you can explore in regard to natural resource preservation and conservation? Cite your sources. And number 5, what are some of the different conservation and preservation programs you can think of for our natural resources? Consider at least 2 different programs and stick to the presentation's format given by the speaker. So those are the questions and I'm hoping you'll be able to answer them all. While viewing the video, I hope that you will have fun learning.
So right now, at this juncture, it is my pleasure to present to you Dr. Eleanor Halak Obis, PMJF, who is the Charter President of Trece Martires Oakwood Centennial MJF. She is also the immediate past zone chair and women and family specialist, who will introduce to us our guest speaker for today. Let us welcome with the warmest applause, Dr. Eleanor Halak Obis.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Jaira. All right. How's my audio? Okay lang po ba? Can you hear me?
Yes, for your audible.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to the prime movers of this powerful, what's this heart movement? Okay, to the 57, what's this listeners present virtually? Okay, to the all, I thank people sa ating circle. So good afternoon. It is actually my honor to introduce to you a very humble man, okay, but of course soaring when it comes to the field of education. He finished his undergraduate studies at Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan as magna cum laude, and Ateneo's most outstanding student leader for being the Central Student Government President. He finished his Master's of Arts in Education as Best Thesis Awardee at Cebu Normal University and as Doctor of Education major in Instructional System Resource Management in University of San Jose Recoletos. Currently, ladies and gentlemen, he is the Dean of the University of San Jose Recoletos School of Education, the Center of Excellence in Teacher Education. He has also seats as a Board of Trustees of the Coalitions for Better Education Philippines. He also represented Philippines to various international gatherings as a speaker and presenter in the following teacher education events: CMO UNESCO Joint Webinar or World Environment Day, Teacher Education Institution Initiatives on Biodiversity and the Lens of ESD in June 2020, International Conference in ESD in Teacher Education as plenary speaker, Okayama, Japan in November 2019, say teacher projects as a conference speaker in the Industry 4.0 and Teacher Education Thailand in October 2019. Second Asia Pacific meeting in ESD and Teacher Education in Asia and the Pacific, Bangkok, Thailand in April 2018. Developing ESD framework for components of ESD and Teacher Education, Bandung, Indonesia in October 2018. Developing teacher support system in rural schools in Southeast Asia, Guilin, China in November 2017. And Education for Sustainable Development, ESD, Project Framework and Teacher Education, Bangkok, Thailand in April 2016. He also worked for more than 70 national teacher training, research and leadership development projects through Microsoft, Globe Telecom, Smart Communication, One Meralco Foundation of Aboitiz Foundation, through the Department of Education for DepEd teachers and principals on topics ranging from 21st century global Filipino teachers, instructional materials development, leadership and management in 21st century in project-based and outcomes-based methodologies. He served as program manager in the following national and local projects, such as ICT training for public school teachers from the Aboitiz Foundation, certificate program for elementary public school teachers funded by the Cebu City government, capacity building for professors of centers of excellence, and development in teacher education on local materials development funded by the Commission on Higher Education, and UNESCO's project on promoting ESD, based community in Asia and the Pacific, funded by Japan, ESD Center and UNESCO Bangkok. He was awarded by USD and the University of Research Council in Jakarta, Indonesia, with $85,000 worth of teacher training projects nationwide. On Bloom Software Training in the Philippines as a counter program manager for 2016 up to 2018. In 2017, he was awarded by Seven Normal University Alumni Federation as the most outstanding CMU alumni in the field of leadership and management and teacher education. He also served as a 3x $1 million roundtable MDRT qualifier of Manulife Philippines as a senior wealth specialist. Recently, he has been recommended by the Department of Education Secretary Leonor Briones to seat as one of the Teacher Education Council members and is currently waiting for the signatures of appointment from the Office of the President of the Philippines. Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, our guest speaker is an active lion, philanthropist, very humble. His heart goes to the lost, to the least, and to the last. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcoming our very humble Dr. Jazz Tony Babia.
Wow, galing naman. Thank you, Dr. Obisa, no, for that very kind introduction. No? So, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. It's my pleasure and honor po to be invited in this heart. No? Akala ko ba yung heart? Heart pala. Tas heart tsaka earth. So kaya naging heart movement. And I'm so very proud sa ating mga organizers, especially po sa ating mga kabataan, no? Na pag-isipan talaga itong napakagandang webinar series na ito, no? So it actually enabled me as well to be more empowered to decide on on thinking of programs as well for the heart, for the earth, no? And for the heart as well. Okay, so parang naka-disabled po yata yung ating screen sharing. So pwede po bang ano po? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Shout out to Miss Joeline Valdopeña and Ma'am Gira Grace, Miss Gira Grace May Kamua. Good afternoon po. Okay. So, good afternoon din po sa lahat. So, maybe we can have some interactions later on, no? Kasi andito naman tayo sa Zoom. But anyway, I'm waiting for the host to allow me to share my screen. Ayan. So, thank you so much. Okay. So, ayan. All right. So basically, I I didn't know exactly what my talk is, but during the invitation, it was more on conservation and protection of our natural resources. Pero dinagdagan ko siya ng konting topic, no? And this topic is actually talking about youth in the lens of ESD. For some of you, baka hindi nyo pa narinig kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng ESD. And then what is the youth involvement perspective in this context? Ano? So in the lens of ESD and at the same time, based on the perspective of our youth. So lahat ng mga nandito ngayon, syempre mga bata, no? So nakikita ko yung profile ng mga kabataan natin. So basically lahat kayo are members of the youth. Of course, kasali na din doon si Dr. Obis, ano? Sige. All right. So basically, Dr. Obis already introduced me as a speaker for today, and at the same time, member pa rin po ako ng youth sector. Ayan. Kasi nga, sabi ng UNESCO, a youth is any individual within the age of 18 and 35 years, irrespective of gender or sex. So I am just 32 years old. No? So I'm still a member of the youth sector. Ano pa rin, ano pa rin tayo sa 35, hindi pa tayo lumalagpas doon. So we are actually belonging as well to the youth. If you think that you are a members of the youth sector, I'd like you to click the like sign button. Right? If you think that you are still members and a proud member of the youth sector, like sign button. Where's the like sign button for everyone? Ayan, so I'm seeing a lot of like sign button. Very proud people. That means that when you are clicking the like sign button, you are actually very proud youth members. Okay, wonderful. Galing, galing, galing. Okay, so yung ginagawa po namin actually is I'm part of the University of San Jose Recoletos as the dean, and I also sit as a director for ESD Center. So ESD stands for Education for Sustainable Development. Mamaya i-discuss natin bakit nga ba in the lens of ESD yung ating pag-uusapan when it comes to conservation and protection of our natural resources, and why is it very important to be integrated in all our initiatives. So our office is actually working for ESD initiatives towards SDG or Sustainable Development Goals on climate change, quality education, community partnerships, and other existing local concerns and conditions related to community-based ESD. So ayan, so maybe later on, no, we will get to understand better what really are our roles as youth members, as our youth sectors, para naman po ay we can invite others, so we can influence and persuade others to also work for the conservation and protection of our natural resources. Ayan. So magtatanong lang ako kasi andito naman tayo sa Zoom, ano? When was the last time you did something for the first time? When was that last time? Kailan ba yung huling time na yon na gumawa kayo ng something? Ewan ko kung anong something yon for the first time. No? So when was that? Sige, tingnan natin sa ating chat box, no? Kung may mga sasagot sa ating katanungan. So this is the most essential question of the day. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Sige nga, masubukan nga natin ang ating mga youth sector from Marinduque. Kung ano ba, marami bang mga sagot yung ating mga youth sector? Kasi pag youth, napaka-very empowered ng mga youth. Ano? Napaka-active, napaka-dynamic ng mga youth. Ang dami-daming mga ideals, ang dami-daming mga gustong gawin. So, sige, let me ask you. So, you just have to write your answers down in the chat box. Sige, mag-aantay ako ng mga sagot. Okay. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Sige nga. Sige nga, tingnan nga natin. Sige, I'm still waiting.
Bago bumalik pero hindi ko nagagawin, sinamantala ko na pagkakataon to really greet you and mabuhay tayong lahat. Isa mapagpalang araw sa ating lahat.
Thank you, President. Ang galing, no? Ang galing ni President. And I hope to see you, President, someday, ha? Para magkapihan naman, mag-usap tayo tungkol sa ating natural and environment resources at sa mga research na din na mention po natin. Basically, later we will be discussing that now. So anyway, so parang sinagot na po lahat ni President yung ating tanong, no? When was the last time you did something for the first time? And there were so many reflections that Dr. President shared to us. And one reflection probably is on the context of sustainability. Pero before that, kasi yung kaibigan ko nagpapa-shout out daw, sabi niya nakikinig daw siya, no? So he is the parang officer yata ng National Commission for parang Information Technology that's in Manila, si Dr. Joseph Bernat. So hello there, my friend. How are you? Okay, anyway. Sige. So, i-connect lang po natin sa sinabi ni Okay, sandali am I still here? Okay, ayan, sorry, let me just share. I-connect lang po natin sa sinabi kanina ni Dr. Solueta, no? So napakaganda ng kanyang mga reflections. I-connect ko lang doon, sabi na we don't need a handful of people being perfectly sustainable. We only need millions of people doing it imperfectly. Kasi naman, like, we are actually gathering or organizing ourselves together. We think of a lot of programs. We're actually working towards sustainable environment, so conservation of the environment and its protection. Pero yung sinasabi nga kanina ni Sir President, is it sustainable? Are we sustaining it for the future? So that's actually the thing. Pero, of course, we don't gather ourselves together as perfect people in the making, but we are actually gathered, the imperfect people working together for perfect for strategies, interventions, and that is the most important thing. Ayan. So basically, kasi most of us here are members of the youth sector, sinabi ni Robert Kennedy, no? So I think we're all familiar with Robert Kennedy, nasabi ni Robert, this world demands the qualities of youth. So ano ba yung pinagsasabi ng qualities of youth? Bakit nga ba kailangan ng mga dekalidad ng mga kabataan? Sabi niya, not a time of a life, but a state of mind, a temper of the will, a quality of imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the love of ease. In other words, Sir Robert Kennedy wants everyone to not just stay within our comforts, but actually go out with our comfort zones and look for something that will disturb our current reality and situation. So what Dr. Suleta mentioned a while ago, no? Parang sinamarize niyo yung sinabi yung talk natin ngayon, that we all should not just be comfortable and feeling the ease of what we are having right now or what we are experiencing right now. So basically, in our context, in our experiences, there are so many disturbing realities that we have to face and that we have to look into. And one of these very disturbing reality is the issue on sustainability. And when we talk about the sustainability, all of us, the youth sector, is challenged to work towards sustainability in action. Kaya nga tinatanong kanina ni Sir President, ilan ba nga dito yung sumali sa ating webinar series? No? So, unfortunately, pag nagdi-discuss kasi tayo ng mga ganitong bagay, if we talk so much about environment, conservation of the natural resources, only few are actually working for it. And that's the reality. That's the saddest reality. However, I will have to present to you later some of the evidences that there's still a greater hope and a greater future for our country, especially involving our youth sector and at the same time involving our schools, no, to achieve the sustainability in action that we all want to desire. So that's the most important thing. Okay. Ayan. So why sustainability? Because sustainability is actually a political choice. Okay, it's not actually a technical one. So sabi ni Gary Lawrence, it's not a question of whether we can be sustainable, but whether we chose to be. So that's the issue, sustainability. If you wanted to talk more about the sustainability issue, we will have to discuss deeper this insight as we go along with our discussion. So for everyone, I'd like you to type the word sustainability. So type po natin doon sa ating chat box, sustainability. So all youth sectors, type the word sustainability. Sige, si Justin. Okay, sustainability. Yes, sustainability. That is actually the heart of our talk for this morning, not for this afternoon. It's about sustainability. You see, according to Gary Lawrence, it's a political choice. Minsan nga, pag ina-invite tayo for these particular conferences, some of us might not be accepting the challenge kasi nga it's a personal choice. It's a political choice at the same time. Whether the government would want to move forward or to work forward for sustainability, that is already his call. Sometimes we cannot tutor what these people will have to think, no? But basically, for some leaders who are working towards sustainable issues, sustainable development, then that is what we are aspiring for, especially in the conservation and preservation of our natural resources. And you could just imagine ano yung nangyayari ngayon sa ating paligid, no? So there was actually a camera from the hindsight, no? Dun sa taas, no? And this is actually the forest in California. So if you notice, nakita niyo yung mga white dyan, there are greens. Of course, the greens represents the different forests. Pero as you could just imagine, and so you can in there, no? Marami ng mga nawawalang mga kahoy, no? So you see that there are so many trees that were denuded, that were actually taken off. And that seems to be very, very disturbing looking at it at the onset, at the macro view. And what seemed to happen basically in the global forest watchfires naman, pag nakikita natin siya sa satellite, meron mga red dots. Ano ba yung red dots? And that red dots represents actually the different forest fires. And as you can see, some of them are denuded. No? Some of them are actually man-made activities, while some is actually natural-made calamities. You know? So some of them nagkaroon ng forest fires because of some issues on climate change, on the degradation, and so many issues are experiencing by us, especially not just only the Filipino people, but the world. And the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat actually comprises this what we call as the biodiversity. No? So lahat naman eh. So we are actually breathing fresh air. I don't know if there's still 100% fresh air that we are breathing right now. The water that we drink is still very, very fresh, or the food that we eat still pure and organic. Those comprises biodiversity. However, there's actually an experience of what we call as the crisis. We all experience this crisis. And when we talk about this crisis, you see, looking back at the time when during our ancestors, from the Homo erectus sapiens and whatever ancestors that we have until such time, you see that the crisis experience is actually increasing through time. And what are these different crises? Humans have increased the species extinction rate by as much as 3 orders of magnitude. Yun yung sabi ng Green Facts. What else? The extinction rate of species is thought to be 1,000 times higher than before. No? So sabi naman ng the benefits. And at the same time, nature and its vital contribution to people, which together embody biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services, are actually deteriorating worldwide. And that is actually, it's like the deterioration is 1,000 times higher than before. That's actually the problem with our biodiversity issue. And the question here is, what does it imply to our future, and how can we stop it? Ano ba yung implications nito sa ating kinabukasan, and how can we ensure that we can stop this, or can we stop this? No? Can we stop all these problems? Basically, we can stop this from having its same kinds of experiences that we're having right now, but we can actually lessen the effects of these problems that are going on in our society. And therefore, the very challenge is this: we have to rethink, restructure the world. No? We had to rethink and restructure the way we see the world. Pero yung tanong natin is kung paano. So I'd like you to type the words rethink and restructure. So that's the most challenging part. No? Rethink and restructure. Type that in the chat box. Rethink and restructure. Ayan, very good. No? So we have to rethink and we also have to restructure. No? Pero yung tanong is paano? So paano? So that's actually the question. How do we rethink and restructure? How do we ensure that we could be part of the solution to the growing problems right now in our society? And at the same time, another context. Speaking of crisis, there's also a data from the Department of Education, Enhanced Basic Education Information System, from school year 2009 to 2010 to 2017 to 2018, showing that there are 43,810 of the almost 47,000 public schools in the country are experiencing natural hazards at least once in 8 years. Tingnan niyo yan? At least once in 8 years, we all experience natural hazard, where there are 39,738 schools had been affected by tropical cyclones, 25,191 had been inundated by flood waters, and 5,825 had faced coastal area concerns. Pero basically, lahat ng mga typhoon na dumating sa atin, sometimes normal na lang yan. So, okay, so uulan ngayon, okay. But you see, through the years, no, kahit sa mga experiences natin, noon when I was still very young, no, hindi ako natatakot pag umuulan eh. So pag umuulan, I'm so happy kasi naliligo tayo sa ulan, lumalabas tayo ng bahay, naliligo tayo sa ulan. But right now, when there is rain, there's actually more of a problem again. So parang iba na yata yung feeling pag umuulan ng malakas, no? Parang may mangyayari ng kakaiba. So there's actually a change in terms of the way how we experience our natural resources right now. And those are some some basic facts, no? And given all those experiences, the youth sector therefore has a pivotal role in advancing sustainable development initiatives, in conserving and preserving our natural resources. And you have the huge role to think of in terms of how do we advance sustainable development initiatives. And when we talk about advancing our sustainable development initiatives, the question is, how does sustainability work, and why is there a need for sustainability to begin with? Bakit nga ba natin sinasabing dapat magiging sustainable tayo? Natandaan ko yung sinabi ni Dr. Solueta kanina, pagkatapos ng tree planting, no? Wala na. Actually, yun din yung example ko. Yun din yung example ko mamaya in reflective to the concept of sustainability, no? So hindi lang dapat ginagawa yan once in a while, pero ginagawa yan through a lifetime kasi nga we are challenged on how to become sustainable. We are challenged to become sustainable individuals. And this is where we understand or should understand the concept of sustainability framework, or this is what we call as the ESD framework, or the education for sustainable development. So that's the education for sustainable development. Sabi nga nila, no, and everyone, I think we all believe this, that to be a youth is good, but empowering and educating the youth is better. Sabi nga nila, di ba? The youth right now, very dynamic, ang dami-daming imaginations, ang dami-daming gustong gawin. No? So being a youth is good. Pero what makes it good is for the youth to be more empowered and to be more educated. It's more of empowering and educating ourselves. However, let's have some reality check. So ito yung mga reality check na sinasabi basically sa atin, no, ng ating share a while ago. So sinasabi ng ating reality check number 1. The youth knows the importance of conserving and protecting the environment, but only few of them knows exactly the importance of sustaining actions towards conservation and protection. Lahat naman natin alam natin that okay, we should work for conservation and protection, but the main issue here is, are we working towards sustaining our actions towards conservation and protection? So that's actually the number 1 challenge. Yung second reality check natin is this. We have a lot of efforts in creating programs for conservation, dami, no? So we can actually name all the programs for conservation across the Philippines and across the globe. There are so many programs. So ang dami-daming programs. But we sometimes don't base it on sound and logical frameworks for sustainability. No? So yun yung parang question, sound frameworks, no? Sound and logical frameworks for sustainability. Hindi natin alam saan ba ito nakabase, saan ba ito nakaangkla. No? So ito yung sinasabi kanina ni Sir na dapat do we have some researches about this? Are we working towards the development, or instead of developing our resources, we are actually letting the resources die its natural death, which is related to the number 2 reality check. A lot of projects die because of problems on sustainability. Still sustainability pa rin. No? So a lot of projects die naturally because we don't know exactly how to make these projects to become sustainable. And those are some reality checks that we all experience. And therefore, having all this, we all need education for sustainable development. No? So we all need that ESD framework, or the education for sustainable development. I'd like you to type that education for sustainable development, or ESD, in the chat box. Go. Education for sustainable development, or ESD. Can you type that in the chat box for me? Okay, wonderful. ESD. Yes. Education for sustainable development. We all need that education for sustainable development. Ang dami-dami. So, may sabi, ESD QT. Sabi ni Sino nagsabi ni Shane Cheska Jane? Sabi ni Shane Cheska Jane, ESD QT. O, diba? So, dapat kailangan, pag sustainable yung gagawin natin, di ba? We should all feel cute. We should all feel beautiful and handsome, no? Because we are working towards something that to conserve and protect the national environment and the resources. Sabi ni Noe Yomi, opo. Okay, sabi ni Noe. All right. So let us therefore understand, ano ba yung sustainability framework na sinasabi ko? No? So what is that sustainability framework that I am actually talking on? Sa ESD framework, kasi this framework is actually designed with all the experts in in climate change, in teacher education, in the academic and industry. They work together through UNESCO programs. We work together. Actually, I was one of those that started working on this. We were in Japan and in Thailand during the time. So we work on identifying the different variables. Ano nga ba yung dapat i-include natin sa sustainability framework? So we look into the environmental aspect. We also look into the social aspect, and we also look into the economic aspect. No, so the social, the environment, and the economic aspect. So in other words, it becomes education for sustainable development of all these three components are present. So if you work for environmental efforts, of course, that will also affect the economic. There's an implication towards the economic conditions. There's also an implication towards the social, the social activities in the society. And basically, these three important elements forms part this what we call as the ESD, or Education for Sustainable Development. However, ESD or sustainability must also begin in schools. Kaya nga challenge sa atin kung paano nga ba bilang isang school, no, bilang isang institusyon, so an academic institution, how do we work towards sustaining our environment, our economic and social conditions? And I'm so very glad, no, kasi nga hindi ko naman alam yung background talaga ng ating mga organizers. I'm so very glad that there's Marinduque State University joining in. So in other words, Marinduque State University is actually working towards sustainability by starting to do these kinds of initiatives, and congratulations for that, no? So kung sa schools na set up natin tinitingnan, dapat din sa ating mga respective institutions tinitingnan natin yung content. If there's really an integration of environment, economic, and social integration, or social aspects, no? Titingnan din natin yung method. How is the method being delivered, no? Kung sa mga youth sectors ito, what methods were used by the different organizational sectors in order for us to really conclude that we are working towards conservation and preservation of our natural resources, kasi yun lang din naman yung ating pinaka-challenge doon. Looking at the curriculum, so kung sa school setting yan, it's the curriculum, how the curriculum is delivered. But in youth organization settings who are actually working for conservation and preservation, tinitingnan natin yung mga proseso, no? Ano ba yung content, for example, ng ating modules na ibinibigay sa ating mga participants? Ano nga ba yung parang initiatives na dapat gagawin ng mga participants so that they will become more sustainable in the process, no? At the same time, in the present, in the future generation. At the same time, ano ba yung mga policies, no? So are there university policies for ESD or for our youth organizations? Do we have policies in the preservation and conservation? And if these policies are being utilized in our own organizations, how do we actualize these policies? How do we monitor and evaluate these policies, no? And at the same time, the community, how do we involve our community, no? So paano ba na-involve yung ating mga community members? Are we just working because it is part of the requirement, or are we working because this is really what we want to desire, to make a community or communal relationships among other members, to have an improved communal relationship, or to make sure that everyone gets to experience the sustainability that we all desire. So yun. And of course, the institution. So how is the institution, how is the institution working towards sustainability? Kasi pag number one, if the institution does not gear or does not, drive its direction towards sustainability in action, nothing will happen. How can we preserve and conserve our natural resources? Number one, even our own institutions are not working towards it. Maybe dapat mag-mute lang siguro. Okay. How can we work for preservation and conservation of our resources if even our own institution is not working towards it? So that will also form part of the reflection. And if we will have to make it more comprehensive in terms of the framework, we look at the conservation in terms of how does it affect our political, our natural, economic, and social resources. And therefore, for us to really have a sound and sustainable action towards conservation, number one is we need to have policy decision making. So, halimbawa, lagay na lang natin sa school, no? So, sabi ni speaker kanina, no, si Sir Solueta, si Doc Solueta, how can you move forward towards sustainability if even in your institution wala ka namang policy about that? So there's no decision making about that. And that's what Sir said, na talagang they are working towards it. They're working towards sustainability, towards conservation. So magaling yan. Kasi nga, na-highlight doon sa policy mismo ng institution that this is what our priority is. Okay. And all living things, resources, and life support system, yung job income, yung people living together, all these are actually affected. No? So the democracy level, the social level, the appropriate development, and that basically enables us to achieve the peace, the equality that we all deserve. So basically, ESD is very, very important for conservation and protection. It's not just about we need to conserve without even understanding what are our different frameworks for our conservation and our protection initiatives. Okay. So why ESD? It's because ESD is a vision and a process. Okay. It's a vision and a process for learning about our interconnected world. Ayan. So I'd like you to type the word vision and process. Okay. So vision and process. Go. Vision and process. ESD is both a vision and a process. Kasi we are actually living in a country and we have a neighboring country and there are so many neighboring countries that we have, although yung iba malayo na sa atin. So in other words, kahit malayo po tayo sa isa't isa, we are actually interconnected to each other. And that is the interconnected world. And therefore, as a process, it motivates us to identify and act in ways that contribute towards achieving our own vision for a more sustainable future. Yun yung dapat nating iisipin eh. Kasi nga po, when we talk about ESD, it's not just the present that we are thinking, but we are actually preparing the future so that our present generation can still enjoy the experiences that we are having right now at present. So that's why we need to integrate ESD. And for some of you, I don't know if you have seen this image already, this is what we call as the SDG or the Sustainable Development Goals. So before, narinig niyo yung sinasabi nating MDG. So MDG is until 2015. Pero hindi pa rin masyadong na-achieve yung MDG natin. So there is this what we call as the SDG. Sinusustain natin kung ano yung mga Millennium Development Goals. And the Millennium Development Goals, there are actually 17 different goals as a blueprint to achieve. Okay. Ayan. As a blueprint to achieve different issues related to poverty, inequality, climate, environmental degradation, prosperity, peace, and justice. And basically with SDG for 2030, we are all challenged to work together so that we achieve the different development goals. And you could just imagine, no, at 2030, no poverty na tayo. So 2030, wala lang mahirap. Okay, so that's actually the vision of SDG. That's the vision and the process. But the question is, are we familiar with the SDG process? So alam ba natin kung anong SDG? Kasi nga, baka gumagawa lang tayo ng mga different programs, but we don't know actually the different frameworks for understanding these programs and for actualizing the importance of why we are doing these programs. And it is because we form part with contributing to the achievement of the SDG goals in 2030. And that's actually the challenge. Okay? So that's actually the challenge. Yeah. So defining ESD therefore empowers the youth sector like you to make informed decisions and responsible actions for environmental integrity, economic viability, and a just society. Take note, environmental integrity. Hindi lamang siya working on preservation and conservation, but if we manifest environmental integrity, it's automatic. We can actually work towards preservation and conservation. Pag nagpre-preserve and nako-conserve natin yung ating natural resources, we can also experience the economic viability. We can be happy together living in a prosperous planet kasi nga we have sustained and preserved this, and we can therefore breathe a fresh air. We can drink a very good water. We can eat a very good food because that forms part with biodiversity issues. And of course, a just society because everyone gets to enjoy whatever it is that, enjoy the effects of, the environmental integrity manifested on our preservation and conservation of our natural resources. And take note, that's for present and future generations while respecting cultural diversity. And it is actually about lifelong learning and an integral part of quality education because, again, it should form part with the transformational society. So pag gumagawa tayo ng program, at the end of the program, there is all this what we call as the transformative or a transformational society. So I'd like you to type the word transformative society. Yan. Transformative society. That's transformative society. Can you type that in? Transformative society. The transformative society is actually our goal. Pag gumagawa tayo ng program, at the end of everything, at the end of the 5, 10, 15 years, iisipin natin, is there a transformation that is happening? May pagbabago ba? May pagkakaiba ba sa time na nagsimula tayo sa isang organization to work for programs and after several years, was there a transformation that happened? So that's actually the challenge because the transformation, if there's a transformation that happened, if transformation is present, there is sustainability. So yeah, there is actual sustainability. And of course, sinasabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, when we talk about sustainable actions, dapat ma-improve yung ating basic education. Sa mga schools pa lang, nakaangkla na ang sustainable development. And therefore, we need to reorient our education to address sustainability issues. And of course, the third one is to increase public awareness and understanding of sustainability. Kailangan yan, di ba? We have to increase our possible understanding and public awareness of sustainability because again and again and again, what we should do right now, especially the youth sector, must have to think more of sustainability development issues. Pero yung pinaka-challenge natin is ito. The challenge is not to merely embrace it. Sabi nga nila, okay, so we are doing this webinar right now. So that's a very good start. And then, okay, so we are doing some activities after this. That's also the second good start as a response to what you have heard from the webinar series. But the question is, are we not just simply embracing it, but we are actually adapting it? So because there should be the presence of growth, the presence of adaptation, and the presence of achievement. However, this holistic and integrated and transformative perspective, hindi siya parang easily embraced eh. Kasi even in our own institutions, meron tayong tinatawag na mga disciplinary silos. Ano ibig sabihin ng disciplinary silos? Si English, si Math, si Science, araling panlipunan, para magkaiba sila, no? So that's what we call as the disciplinary silos. Iba-iba yung kanilang mga outcomes. But why not use all these different subject areas to work together, to become interrelated together, so that we can reflect on how we structure our institutions and measure our achievements towards sustainability. Yung pinakatanong lang dito is how will that happen? Why is it very important? Who will do it? How will it be done? And of course, thinking what was achieved. That's why it's very important to have those kinds of reflections. And of course, our key Christian beliefs naman. No? So most of us are Christians here. God created the universe. Alam naman natin yan. Everything created belongs to God and not us. And God gave human beings the responsibility to care for it. And when we meet God in the afterlife, we will be asked to account for how well we have looked after this gift. Kasi nga yung natural resources natin is a gift eh. But the question is, are we taking care so much of the natural resources that God has bestowed upon us? And saan ba ito makikita? Makikita ito sa Genesis, di ba? So God created human beings, making them to be like Himself. He created the male and female, blessed of them, and said, have many children, so that your descendants will live all over the earth and bring it under their control. So I'm putting you in charge of the fish, the birds, and all the wild animals. And I have provided all kinds of green, all kinds of fruit for you to eat. But for all the wild animals and birds, I have provided grass and leafy plants for food, and it was done. So the Lord God placed the man in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and guard it. If we are Christians in the Bible, it actually says it on the first book of the Bible, that's in Genesis, that we are created in order to take care of the fish, the birds, and all other living things on earth. Pero yung ginagawa kasi natin is we are actually not taking care of it. But what happens is we are indeed doing something in order to make it to worsen it. So that's actually the problem. So in other words, the implication of what the Bible said, no, the Christian virtue said, that the youth are actually the stewards of God's loving creation. No, ang ganda, no? So we are stewards of God's loving creation. So I'd like you to type the word stewards of God's creation. No? So we are the stewards of God's creation. Type that in the chat box. Steward of God. Steward. The word stewards. Okay, so the stewards of God's creation. Wonderful. We're actually the stewards of God's loving creation. But the question here is, so what therefore must the youth do? Ano ba yung gagawin dapat ninyo in order for you to empower yourselves to become sustainable stewards of God's loving creation? Ano ba yung dapat gawin? So there are so many things that we can do. No? And with these particular things that we probably can do, we have to make sure that we are really involving ourselves in the process and reflect on if these involvements are all important, are all necessary. Is it a necessity? Okay? So, okay. Kasi binibigyan lang tayo, by the way, ng isang oras. Ano? Alright. So the first thing is, napaka-importante po sa atin, especially for the youth sector, to do some environmental scanning. Ano ba yung problema? Is there a problem? Or pag may problem, ano ba yung specific problems ng ating environment? So we do environmental scanning. Or we do research or we read some researches and articles on issues on sustainability towards conservation and protection of our natural resources to contribute to the knowledge-based economy. Very important yan. Lahat naman tayo dito mga kabataan, no? So most of you are actually working for a goal and you are joining some activities, you are joining some of these things in order for us to become more environmentally involved, for all these actions. So kailangan natin mag-involve, we have to involve, we have to read a lot of researches, ano ba yung mga issues natin ngayon. And perhaps when you ask this and when you do this, you might be asking questions like, what environmental issues are currently disturbing me at present? Ano ba yung mga different issues that are disturbing me? Do I need to involve myself in these issues? Where are these involvements? Okay? So tatanungin natin yan. Or, how can I contribute towards sustainability in action? Paano ba ako makakapag-contribute towards the sustainability in action? And how can I communicate my ideas in building a happy and successful pluralistic community? So these are all actually the things that we have to remember. Tanong ko lang, no? So andito naman tayo lahat sa platform ng Zoom, no? Do you need to involve yourself in environmental issues? So yes or no lang ang ating sagot. So I'd like you to type yes if it's yes for involvement. I'd like to type to type no pag hindi naman. So tingnan natin kung ilan sa lahat mas grabe yung yes ni Romilyn Cristobal. Yes. Ang lakas ang daming S ng kanyang yes, no? So ibig sabihin she is really more empowered to do something. That's very true. That's a very good advocacy. Everyone should have that type of advocacy. But before doing such advocacy, again, is we go back to the different frameworks. Ano ba yung framework na saan ba nakaangkla yung ating advocacy for preservation and conservation of our natural resources? And basically, the youth right now, the youth sector's challenge is on how to bridge the gap between theory and practice for environmental conservation and preservation. Yesterday, I talked about financial literacy sa mga DepEd teachers in the central office. Right now, same pa rin, no? There's a gap between the theory and practice. Yung ginagawa kasi is, yung parang minsan, kung ano yung dinediscuss sa school, hindi naman yun ang nagagawa in reality. So there should be a bridge between the theory and the practice. No? Kasi ang dami namang may alam, ang daming researches, ang daming mga ganito, ang daming sa mga Scopus Index journals. No? However, the problem is, are we working towards really the environmental conservation and preservation? And therefore, how do we enable ourselves to rise above the ladder towards community success? Because everyone should be working together towards community success. And that's the most important thing. Okay? So number two, okay, yung pangalawa, we have to participate actively in school and community organizations and programs that will enhance, preserve, conserve, protect, and sustain the environment and the natural resources. So for the information of everyone, kasi nga I'm also working in an institution. No? So, nag-work ako sa University sa San Jose Recoletos. Meron din kaming tinatawag naming ESD movement. No? So, and basically with this ESD movement, this is actually a participation of all of the 4 institutions in the Visayas region. So, most of them are actually working towards sustainable development actions. And we work for collaborative transformation. And so we work with our curriculum integration and partnerships. We work into how to strengthen our research and development in biodiversity. We incorporate sustainability and conservation across discipline, and we also foster international linkages on sustainability and education. So basically, all these efforts ginagawa namin. So ginagawa ng 4 institutions na ito. And the bottom line is actually what we call as partnerships. Yung ginagawa ninyo ngayon, you invited different sectors, there are actually different sponsors for the program. Yung ginagawa niyo is actually what we call as collaborative partnerships, no? For collaborative transformations. And if you notice, for Cebu Normal University, for example, meron silang tinatawag na program on chance, no? That's connecting humans and nature to conservation experiences. Ang lahat ng mga involved dyan ay mga estudyante, mga kabataan ng kanilang institution. And of course, this is also based on their community extension services. Meron din tayo sa Cebu Technological University, like halimbawa sa kanilang vision and mission and goals and outcomes, talagang nakalagay na doon yung word on sustainability, word on environmental preservation, no? So the management of resources, climate change initiatives, nakalagay doon. Kasi nga, as what I've said, in the framework for sustainable development, there should be a policy that will state basically that this is what you want to advocate. No? So this is the environmental preservation advocacies that you wanted to work for. Ayan. And of course, we also have Philippine Normal University. Meron silang yung mga kabataan nila for in teacher education. Nagtatanim sila ng kanilang mga mangroves, no, in the vicinity of the university, that's in PNU Visayas. So yung mga youth sectors naman, along with the different local community residents, are actually planting different mangroves. No? So that's with Philippine Normal University. And in our school, we also do a lot of researches, because again, it's very important to do researches. No? So yours truly, together with my friend, no, from a different university, had published Scopus Index Journal. And this talks about education and sustainable development. What are the different community-based projects of the Philippines? No? And in this particular research that we have shared, no, actually I shared this in our session in Japan last week, no. So last week lang, where we're actually having meeting on education for sustainable development, particularly on climate change. Napapansin natin based on the research, yung sinasabi dito, so yung found out namin, yung mga projects naman natin sa Philippines are responding, they are enabling, they are engaging, they are embedding. Pero what is lesser is the transforming part. In other words, marami tayong projects that talks about conservation and preservation of our resources. But the challenging part is on the transformation part. Whether, kasi sa ESD kailangan may stakeholders, whether our partner stakeholders have been transformed, whether our own organizations and institutions have been transformed based on the projects that we have made, or whether the community experienced the whole transformation towards sustainability, because this is what is supposed to be, is expected. No? So you see, that's the sustainability issues and concern. No? Are we really transforming them? No? And sustaining, yes, but the concept on transformation is actually a huge problem. And so, yung sa amin naman, yung mga bata naman sa school is, they're actually using now, there's this ESD framework, ESD subject, no, nakalagay dun sa aming curriculum. And then, yung mga students are gumagawa sila ng mga activities like multifunctional outdoor eco bag, utility clay soil plastic wrapper, mga automated waste segregator, erasable alco pens, retractable tile armchairs, simplified drainage system, eco notes, bioplastic manipulative, solar water bottle filter, tumbler, earth-friendly bamboo pencil, edible vitaminized utensils, eco bricks. Ang dami-dami, no? Ang dami-dami. So you see, the schools basically should also work for it. No? So, and schools and the youth sector must also partner with schools on how to achieve this conservation and protection of our natural resources. And you see that kahit nga yung aming mga students, no, in the university are really challenged to think of different programs and projects that will involve preservation and conservation of our society. Yes. Number 3. Yung number 3 naman, if you have an existing organization, you have to clearly identify your project goals and your objectives. So, ano ba yung mga metrics and targets ninyo so that you can attain sustainability in action? Kasi balik tayo dun sa sinabi ni Pres Solweta kanina, no, na I hope si Pres andito pa si Pres, no, sabi ni Pres kanina, ano ba yung mga tree planting na yan? Bakit hindi naman sustainable ba yan? So gagamitin natin yung example ni Pres. So yung example ko din is tree planting, no? Kasi karamihan naman pag sinasabi natin conservation and preservation, yung naiisip agad natin tree planting, di ba? So tama naman, tree planting is actually para sa akin that's for me the most important thing, no, na gagawin natin kasi nga pag may mga maraming subdivisions na nakapaligid sa atin, yung lahat ng punong kahoy napuputol na, no? So wala na talagang mga fresh wala talagang wala nang punong kahoy na talagang mag-help in producing, fresh air. And so, how do we mitigate? What are our mitigating measures in order for us to conserve and protect these resources? Halimbawa, di ba? We know for a fact that there are different projects for the government. Like for example, yung parang magtatayo ng mga iba't ibang tulay, no, na magko-connect from one place over the other. There should be mitigating factors or mitigating, identifying on how to mitigate. Kasi pag nakalagay doon talaga, nakatulok yung doon sa ilalim ng dagat, yung mga resources, mga coral reefs, mga ganun, masisira yung lahat. So kino-compute yun kung ilan bang percentage yung masisira and what will be the mitigating factors that will have to be done in order to ensure that our resources are being protected. So dapat yun dapat yun, no? So okay, for this particular example, halimbawa, yung objective niyo is you will conduct a tree planting activity and then you organize different youth sectors for the tree planting and then empower the youth sector by enabling them to reflect on the importance of preserving the natural resources. So yung activity is tree planting. Pero dapat we have to make sure ano ba yung talagang metrics. So yung metrics nun, kasi nga we wanted to invite other youth sectors as well to work with us. So yung part of the metric is talagang letters sent to respective partner sectors. Magkakaroon din ng soil test basically kasi pag nag-tree planting lang hindi naman natin tinitest yung soil, no? At nagtataka tayo bakit kaya hindi tumubo yung aming mga pananim kasi nga hindi naman naka-soil test. So yung species na yon is hindi siya appropriate doon sa particular soil, no? So na tinataniman natin. So that's actually what we call as the soil test. The number of youth participation and the number of trees planted, no? So probably yung target natin at least 5 letters sent to different youth sector, at least there are 3 to 4 testing na nangyayari, at least there are 30 to 50 youth sectors and there are 100 to 500 trees planted. So in other words, napakaklaro dapat ng ating metrics at saka ng target. Hindi lang na, magti-tree planting tayo ngayon. Okay, so ilan ba yung sumali sa tree planting? Okay, 100. Okay na yun. Okay na. Game na. Importante na kapag tree planting. So ganon. So hindi dapat ganon. No? Because looking back at the framework of sustainable development, there should really be sustainability for the environment, for the economic and the social sustainability and social perspectives as well. Napaka-importante niyan. And for us, no, on the next succeeding cycle, monitoring and evaluation must be done based on the guided questions. Importante yan, no? So, on the guided questions, how will the growth of the trees be monitored? Paano pa i-monitor kung tumubo ba yung mga pananim natin? Number 2, who will monitor them? No? So, yun ba yung mga nag-plant noon, i-monitor din ba nila? So, parang we have to be clarified on that. Based on the success rate indicated, say in the metrics and target, what shall the groups do if those were not achieved? Paano pag hindi na-achieve yung metrics and target? Paano pag sa 500 trees, 500 species na itatanim natin, paano pag dalawa lang yung tumubo nun? So what will be the other factors that we will have to do? No? And how will the success rate be communicated to other stakeholders? It's very important. If there is a success that's happening actually in the organization, no, particularly for tree planting, for example, and then maraming natanim ang talagang tumubo lahat, so on and so forth. And so how will we communicate this? No? In what ways are we communicating this? Because it's very important that your initiative must also have to be communicated in other sectors, no? In other government sectors, in non-NGO sectors, and academic industry sectors. And who will benefit? No? So how will the program be replicated given the success rate? Ayan. So the communication part is very important in order for the organization or the sector to think, how can this be replicated? Okay. So the number 4 is, of course, if you have extensive organizations working for sustainable or education, you have to partner with schools and other organizations through community of practice initiatives. Ano ba yung community of practice initiatives? So itong community of practice initiatives, ito yung parang organization that, all organizations meet together to discuss what are the domains or the problems that and areas that needs to be shared, what are the key issues na i-share ng bawat organizations. And then, ano ba yung relationships ng organizations na yun to community? And then, what are their best practices? So you can just imagine all the different organizations working for conservation and preservation are meeting together from Region 1, Region 2, Region 3. They form a community of practice and they will share together what are their best practices, no? And how are the community members being involved in that? And what key issues are being identified in this particular practice? And so with the community of practice, we actually connect with communities. We work out loud and we learn out loud at the same time. So we work in teams. There's social networks going on later, no? Kasi nga, pag naiintindihan mo na, okay, this is what the organization is working with, and this is also what my organization is working with, so we can fine-tune and find ways in order for us to work together. So that's actually what community of practice is all about. Itong ginagawa natin ngayon, we are empowering ourselves as youth members to also be part of that community of practice. This one is a very good exercise na nakikinig kayo sa mga initiatives, na nakikinig kayo sa speaker, nakikinig kayo kung ano yung mga initiatives na ginagawa ng iba't ibang institutions, ginagawa ng iba't ibang organizations to achieve education for sustainable development towards preservation and conservation. And of course, number 5 is you can also do varied personal initiatives. Pag wala kayong personal organizations or youth organizations, you can work naman on your own initiative that will help contribute towards sustainable development. So basically, yung first natin na example is you can actually start by writing newspapers, no? To the letters to the editor column. You can choose any environmental problem in your locality and write a clear comment on the issue and your proposed solutions. Probably like that, no? So you can actually post something in Facebook or your Instagram or your TikTok that will advocate for environmental preservation and conservation. Napaka-importante niyan. Number 2 is you can actually tap the government. So you can act on local complaints like public water leakage, daytime streetlights burning and dumping, unhygienic garbage. You can actually do that. No? So you can help in maintaining the environment, the surroundings that you are in. You can actually get the local numbers of the government and, tell them that these are the problems in the community when it comes to the garbage disposal and the like. Or you can actually start creating programs for youth on responsible stewardship, changing lifestyles towards responsible citizenship, and etc. In other words, ang dami-dami yung pwedeng gawin. You have so many options to do in order for you to contribute to the sustainable development in your community and in our country. And paano yan, Sir Just Tony, no? Na it's pandemic right now. Ano ba yung gagawin namin? Wala naman, yung movement namin is still very, very limited. No? So yung sasabihin ko lang po sa inyo, nothing really has changed and the old normal still exists. No? So yung nati-change lang is it will only change the way we think and re-strategize our initiatives to achieve sustainability and transformation for the world through youth empowerment. So you should all be empowered. I'd like you to type the word, I am empowered. Sige, type niyo yan, ba? I am empowered. Sige, I'd like you to type that in the chat box. I am empowered. Yes, dapat lang. You have to be empowered, no? So in the empowerment, that's actually the first step, no? So the empowerment is actually an indication that you have responded to the change. Pero once you are empowered, no? So it's now your chance to be more engaged in the process. And once you are engaged in the process, that's also your opportunity to become more reflective in the process. Very important yan. It's very important to reflect on the things that you do. And whether in the things that you do, there is what we call as transformation, whether we are empowered or not empowered. So yan. Okay. And if this so, the youth should have the clarity of refocus on mindset. The clarity number 1 is ganito. The global problems exist and will continue to exist. Yung climate change naman, that's happening right now eh. Hindi na natin masastop yan. Stop climate change. Hindi gano'n, no? Stop earthquake. Hindi naman gano'n, no? Hindi dapat gano'n yung ating konsepto noon, no? Hindi naman dapat gano'n, no? So, gender inequality, these are all things that are probably existing, no? And, So if this is so we can create bigger and better initiatives for the world to be sustained to our own little actions. So sa ating mga little actions, those actions that I have presented or other actions that we think on what to do. Next, teaching process, has not changed. It just happened via a different platform, di ba? The way how we do things, our planning process has not changed. It just happened by a different platform. So we simply change face-to-face to virtual interaction for planning initiatives. Like this, yung ginagawa natin ngayon, kahit malalayo tayo sa isa't isa, you are in Marinduque, I am in Cebu right now, but we are actually doing these planned initiatives, no? And later on, conduct the activities following government protocols. So pwede namang ganun yun. Or it could also be like, the world progresses as it continues to grow. Di ba nagpo-progress naman yung ating mundo, no? So, hindi naman natin masa-stop yung kanyang progress. But of course, in every progress, there's always corresponding implications. No? Some of these progress might also affect our environment and natural resources. And so therefore, we have to make sure that we need to cope up with this change, okay? And we need to advance our ways through more community partnerships and collaboration. So that's actually the most important thing that we have to work on and we have to reflect at the same time. So significant firsts are innovations. So significant firsts are innovations. So sabi ng ni Sir Kenny, Industry 4.0, ayan. So those are Industry 4.0 innovations because it yields specific growth. So it yields growth. And everyone should do something and everyone should contribute something in order to achieve the growth that we all desire. And ito yung second and last slide ko kasi 1 hour na. Binigyan na ako ng 1 hour. And may meeting pa rin ako after this. He therefore, sabi ni Saint Bonaventure, he therefore, who is not illumined by such great splendor of created things is blind. And he who is not awakened by such great clamor is deaf. And he who does not praise God because of all these effects is dumb. He who does not note the first principle from such great things is foolish. Open your eyes, therefore. Prick up your spiritual ears. Open your lips and apply your heart that you may see our God in all creatures. What we're actually doing with the environment is a reflection on how we also respect our God. And everything that is there in the environment is actually a creation of God. And if you will not take care of these little, tiny, and wonderful or big creations, whatever creations that, we are also not taking care of our good relationships with our God. So with that, let us all therefore work our hands together, join our hands together towards a sustainable planet, towards a sustainable people, and towards a sustainable, towards prosperity. No? So that's planet, people, and prosperity. So my 1 hour is done. I'd like to thank you for the time that you have shared, that you have also gave to as you listen to my presentation. Thank you, and once again, good afternoon.
All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Justoni Babia, for that very inspirational talk, and of course for building a sense of responsibility among the youth sector. Indeed, environmental protection and conservation is an incredibly important part of our lives. In order to protect the sustainability of the planet, everyone needs to commit to becoming more environmentally aware. And Dr. Justoni Babia explained why we need to be more environmentally aware and why it is important. So once again po, thank you very much po.
I hope that you learned something today for our meaningful discussion about education for sustainable development and of course your very important role as youth sectors in order to preserve and conserve our natural resources via the lens of education for sustainable development framework. I hope to see you next meeting for our meaningful discussion and I hope that you will also apply what you have learned in today's session. Thank you and bye!